What's the weirdest thing you've seen happen at a friend's house that they thought was normal? When I was in about first grade, my best friend at the time had a lot of temper tantrums. We were having a sleepover and I fell asleep in her bedroom. In the middle of the night, I woke up in a different bed with her father. I was so confused, but he explained that she had a temper tantrum and her mom went to sleep in her bed with her, so they moved me to the guest room. I was young and didn't understand that's not normal that he was sleeping in the same bed as me, just him and me. I told my parents when I went home the next day and they were extremely concerned, asking me if he touched me, etc. I was highly confused because my pure innocent mind didn't understand the concept of that, lol. Now as an adult I'm like, why didn't they just move me to the other room? Why did the dad have to get in bed with me? LOL. They're truly good people and nothing happened, but it's weird. More of a date story. Was on a date with a guy who was cooking dinner for me and his dog took a giant horse piss in the living room. I jumped up, a bit panicked, trying to get the guy's attention to what just happened. The guy didn't even look up when he said, "Oh yeah, she does that sometimes," and that was it. I asked him if there was a towel and disinfectant I could use to help clean it up and the guy says, "I'll just throw some Febreze on it after dinner." I suddenly realized the musty smell I noticed earlier wasn't from his cool and rustic cabin being under a canopy of trees, or that the floor in the same location that bowed when you stepped over it was because it was old. Ate dinner at a table that was couple feet away from the dog toilet. Left. Fucking gross. At every meal, my ex's parents would set a plate on the table for the dog. The dog would sit in a chair and eat at the table with the people. Here's an I was that family story. My godmother, who was practically an aunt, ran a fairly successful daycare out of her home in the 90s. She was a first-generation immigrant to the US, whose parents came to the New England area from Ireland. My two younger brothers and I spent a lot of time at her home and I was generally the oldest child there. When I was about 8 years old, she started to have me make her favorite drink. Gin and tonic. She drank these all day, while running her home daycare. At age 8 I knew how to mix cocktails, that forks were better for stirring than spoons, and that large plastic bottles of gin were cheap and low quality. This went on for years, on pretty much a daily basis, until my family moved out west. My godmother kept her daycare running until she died, I'm sure of health problems relating to alcohol. I was 15 when she passed and I'm in my 30s now. I honestly went most of my life thinking nothing of it until I became a father a couple of years ago. At which point I was like, how the fuck did anyone let her have a daycare? Side note, I drink but would consider myself an average drinker, if not below average. With that being said, I could never stomach the thought of gin and didn't try gin until I was 30. This was because I once licked my finger, early in my daycare bartending career, after a couple of drops of gin splashed on my hand as I was pouring. That plastic half-gallon quality gin was the worst thing I'd ever had in my life and I had no idea how my godmother liked it so much. Complete ruined my taste for gin, at 8. Deleted. Went with a few friends to one of their family's houses for a birthday party when I was like 15 or 16. We smoked weed, swam, and had a great old time. After eating we settled in to watch a horror movie and at some point I looked around me and everyone in that family was sitting in the same crisscross applesauce position and slowly rocking back and forth while watching TV. Definitely not the weirdest thing on this thread by far, but something about it was extremely creepy. They were nice as hell, though. A similar thread popped up a few months/years ago and I will never forget the family that shared milk. If you didn't finish it, it got poured into someone else's glass or the carton. Including the friend guest. For some reason, drinking someone else's backwash milk is repulsive to me and has remained a memorable post. Not really weird I guess, but first time in my husband's parents' house, just a friend at the time, I got to see what a hoarder house looked like. It wasn't even a well-known term/condition back then, so it just really shocked me seeing the giant mounds of stuff everywhere and having to navigate through it all. His room was clean, the rest of the house, not so much. 15 years ago. Visit a friend house who live in San Francisco around 3rd Street, bad neighborhood area. Upon entering, pass by the kitchen for gas stove flame was in full blast, not cooking anything, no vent, you can literally see a big burn hole in the ceiling all the way through the second floor room. His mom was upstairs, one of those rooms far away from the bottom floor kitchen, watching TV in full blast. Long story short, They are basically using their gas stove as a centralized heater for the whole house. I'm a certified fire safety director at my work. This almost gives me a heart attack. Went to a sleepover at this girl's house and her mom was obsessively taking pictures of us all night. At one point, we were watching a movie and my friend passed out and her mom, I shit you not, pulls out a huge newscast type heavy-duty camera and starts recording her daughter sleeping for a solid 5 minutes. I have trouble sleeping and so that night when us kids were in the bedroom to sleep, I was on the floor, just staring at the wall in the dark. I was facing away from the door, laying on my side. I hear the door creak, some footsteps and then the darkness of the room lit with a sudden flash. I got up just in time to see the door close. I know it was her mom taking pics of us. The weirdest part to me is that it was about 3 a.m. when that happened. Meaning the girl's mom either had an alarm or just stayed up that late in wait. Found out my best friend thought the toilet seat was for kids. He would straight up sit on the rim of the toilet and poop until I found out when we were in college at 22. Family had like styrofoam bricks next to the couch in the living room for the explicit purpose of throwing at the TV if they didn't like the show, or if a character said something stupid. I walked into my GFS living room and out of nowhere their chocolate lab, from outside, jumps through an open window and lands on the couch. I just froze and her son's like, oh he does that, this was in Florida. My best friend walks around completely naked. We have been friends for 25 years and it doesn't bother me. I'm used to it, but it gets weird when she invites me, my husband and toddlers over for dinner. Hey girl, how's your rules? But since husband and kids are coming, can you put some clothes on? Sure. No problem. Don't worry about the bed bugs, they don't hurt that much. I had a friend in HS. We're still friends today actually. His mom was a hoarder. There were little pathways throughout the house but it was filled, from floor to ceiling, with junk. In the hallway to the bedrooms, she had stacked every newspaper she ever got. They were tied up in bundles. When you walked in that hallway he would caution to not touch the papers because if a row fell, it would take a couple hours to dig yourself out. So when I was younger my dad died. My mom remarried and had 2 kids. I was moved into the basement. Unfinished basement. I didn't think anything of it since I was 10. I had a sheet blocking my area from the laundry area. It had bare concrete walls, wood beams, and piping across the ceiling and cement flooring. Used a heater and dehumidifier cause it was cold and humid. When I used the heater my parents would make my sheeted area around my bed so it would heat up the space quicker. Parents didn't allow any of my friends over and my brother and sister weren't allowed in my room. Distant family members also never stayed over and when we had family gathering, I was told to go into the guest room instead of my room while they were there. I thought cool, I have a huge room and no one can mess it up. My family would go on vacations yearly without me from when I was 12 till I was 18. I was the dog and house watcher. During one of those vacations when I was 17 I invited a friend come over. They pointed out how fucked up it was that there were bedrooms fully furnished with TVs for my brother and sister, a guest room fully furnished as well with a TV, and how I was in the basement with sheets for walls and bathroom mats on the floor. I completely dismissed it cause it was normal to me. It wasn't till I was 20 that I found out that the family trips that I didn't go on were paid for with money that I was getting from my dad passing away. I'm sure I got some of the money in food and clothes and whatever I needed. But it's got me pretty fucked up cause my brother and sister don't have any memory of it and when I talk about it they always back my parents by saying we were raised right and I opted out of vacations. They also thought the guest room was my room. Add on. I just wanted to thank everyone for being so kind and welcoming with your thoughts. There is a lot and this whole day has been way more emotional than I could have ever expected. I'm trying my best to get back to everyone and if I miss you, it was an honest mistake. Again, thank you everyone loudly crying face loudly crying face loudly crying face you all deserve the world. Also, if any of you need someone to talk to, my door is always open. They let the dogs and cats into the basement to go to the bathroom even though they had a fenced-in backyard. The whole house smelled, even the kids when they went to school. My family were very comfortable and my mom always babysat lots of kids from around the neighborhood. Basically her place was just where the kids hung out. Once there was an emergency with my dad and my mom really needed somebody to watch me overnight and I wound up with one of the families that she babysat for. They were really nice people and I was close friends with their kids obviously because they were at my house every day. It was a new experience though. This was the first time I'd ever seen people living in real poverty. I was kind about it and I didn't say anything, but parts of it were a real shock to me. The toilet didn't work, but they had just continued to use it to the point that it was piled up to the seat. We had to unscrew the light bulb to turn off the lights because the switch would shock you if you touched it. I felt really bad for them. It was just a real eye-opener for me as a kid, and it gave me a much better understanding of exactly why my mom babysat and fed all those kids. I babysat for a family on occasion and the kids would always ask for a cool cup and I had no clue what it was. They asked for them constantly but were too little to really describe them enough for me to understand. I mentioned it to the mom in passing one day and she started laughing and cut the tops off of some bell peppers and took out the seeds and then filled the peppers with tap water. The kids went nuts over them like they were treats. It was really weird to me that drinking water out of bell peppers was a thing to beg for on the regular. Stayed at a friend's house when I was probably 10 or 11, and we had a sleepover one night, and we were up really late playing games and just talking. Around 3 to 4 a.m., his dad comes in, frantic, saying that he heard someone breaking in upstairs, and that we needed to leave immediately. Anyways, we walk out of the house, and he tells the neighbor that they need to leave too. The neighbor looked extremely worried, and pulled her phone out. We drive to a place and he gets us some food, and eventually an ambulance comes, and so does the neighbor along with it, because apparently the father was schizophrenic and having an episode. There was really no break-in. Obviously my friend now knows this, but back then, we genuinely believed him.